I opened my front door, and a bright red paper slapped against the screen. It was an eviction notice, fluttering in the cold morning wind like a banner of bad news. My hands felt immediately cold as I snatched it up. The date was 3 days old, meaning I had already missed the deadline to respond. I read the signature at the bottom, supposedly my landlord, Mr. Jenkins, but it looked shaky and completely wrong. My heart began to pound a heavy rhythm of fear and anger. Across the street, I saw Greg Stanton standing on his fancy stone driveway. He was watching me with that smug, practiced grin he always wore, and it made me feel sick. This little house wasn't just wood and nails, it was Alice's dream, the place she painted and filled with light. Losing it now felt like losing her all over again, and the grief made my hands tremble. I looked down at the paper one last time. The official, fancy letterhead at the top read, Stanton Property Management. I realized with a sudden, sickening jolt that this notice came from Greg's own company. The sheer audacity of his move showed he believed he was untouchable and above the law. I knew right then this was a fight, not a simple misunderstanding. I wouldn't let him do this. If you're watching this, subscribe, like and let me know where you're watching from. I drove straight to Mr. Jenkins' apartment complex, almost running every stop sign. I showed the older man the red eviction paper, and he looked completely stunned. "Nelson, I never sent this," he promised, his eyes wide with surprise. We put the fake notice next to a real contract he had signed months ago. When we compared them, the difference was clear. The signature on the eviction paper was a childish, obvious forgery. Mr. Jenkins then told me the awful truth. Greg Stanton had tried to buy my house and the lot it sits on many times, always offering far less than it was worth. As I drove back, I knew Greg hadn't stopped there. He had also filed a fake, property damage complaint with the city, using false photos. I raced to my backyard, and my blood ran cold. My beautiful garden, which Alice loved and spent hours tending, had been completely trampled and destroyed. Worse, the small stone memorial bench we had placed there for Alice was smashed into 2 big pieces. This malicious vandalism confirmed Greg's deep spite and made his intentions clear. I needed proof fast, but when I tried to pull up my doorbell camera footage, it was missing from the cloud. I rushed inside and got to my computer right away. I checked my security camera cloud account. Just as I feared, the account had been hacked, and every single clip of video was deleted. I called my trusted friend, Cecilia, who is brilliant with computers and codes. Cecilia worked quickly, tracing the exact computer that had logged in and done the damage. The result was sickeningly predictable. The hacker's computer belonged to my neighbor, Greg Stanton's own IP address. The evidence was clear. Greg was trying to erase any proof of his crimes. I stood there, staring out the window at the crushed flowers and the shattered stone bench. I picked up a photo of Alice. Her gentle eyes seemed to look right at me. "I won't let him erase you, Alice," I whispered, my voice rough with emotion. "I won't let him destroy your memory or your home." Just as I felt my resolve harden, there was a loud knock. I immediately braced myself for more unwelcome conflict and further legal intimidation. A courier stood on my porch and dropped a thick legal envelope. It was a summons. Greg Stanton was suing me for negligence over the fake property damage he had caused himself. The first day of the court hearing was a painful blur. Greg's lawyer was sharp and cruel, wearing a dark suit and speaking in a smooth, mean voice. She told the judge that I was unstable and not taking proper care of the house. She argued that since my wife's death, I was still grieving and unpredictable, and that I was letting the property become a hazard. I felt my stomach clench. Greg was taking my deepest sadness, my love for Alice, and turning it into a weapon to steal my home. During a recess, Greg found me in the courthouse parking lot. He walked right up to me, his chest puffed out like a silly bird. "You'll be gone by the time I get back from vacation," he sneered, his voice low and hateful. "The land will be cleared." I stared at him, controlling my shaking fists. His confidence suggested he had already manipulated the system, making me feel helpless. Just then, Cecilia texted me some important news. She had uncovered that Greg had a network of secret shell companies he was using to quietly buy up all the cheap homes in the neighborhood. He wasn't just after me, he was after the whole street. That evening, I knew I couldn't rely on the old cameras. I bought and carefully installed several new hidden cameras all around my property. I hid them deep in the bushes and under the roof eaves so they were impossible to see. I watched the live feeds on my small tablet late into the night, waiting for Greg's next move. Finally, around 2 a.m., I saw them. Two large, burly men in dark clothes were sneaking into my yard, just like the night before. They weren't there to steal, they were there to make trouble. They started dumping old, broken junk, wet garbage, and debris near my fence, making the yard look like a true mess. They quickly snapped photos with their phones, pictures that would be used against me in court. Proof at last, I thought, my heart beating with nervous excitement as I recorded everything. As the men walked away, I heard one of them mutter something that stuck in my head. He said she'd never fight back this hard, the worker mumbled to his partner. This comment revealed Greg's flawed, gendered assumptions about my identity and his target. She? They didn't even know that I, Nelson, lived here. They thought they were fighting a helpless woman. 287 words, I needed to make Greg and his crew feel safe, so they would make a mistake. I started pretending to pack up, putting big, empty boxes on my porch and making phone calls where I talked loudly about giving up and leaving. My trick worked perfectly. Greg's men grew sloppy and careless, thinking their job was almost done. The hidden cameras kept recording them littering and messing up my yard. Then, one night, a very careless worker made a huge mistake. He accidentally left a bright yellow, folded-up work order stuck to my fence. I grabbed it quickly and brought it inside. The paper was clearly signed by Greg Stanton himself and described the job of making my property look like a disaster area. The fury I felt was cold and deep. I had the proof I needed, but the danger was about to get much worse. The evidence now connected Greg directly to the destruction of my property. As I walked through the kitchen, I noticed a powerful, sharp scent hanging in the air. It was the faint, unmistakable smell of gas inside my house. I ran to the stove in a panic and saw that one of the gas valve knobs had been turned just a tiny bit, not enough to smell right away, but enough to build up. I twisted it shut instantly, my hands shaking badly. I had barely escaped a massive disaster. A single spark, perhaps from the fridge or a light switch, would have exploded the entire home, destroying everything inside. Soon, sirens were wailing outside, and smoke was pouring from the stove's small flame. The thought of losing this house, this last memory of Alice, was crushing. You tried to take her memory, I whispered, looking up at the smoke alarm, and now you tried to take me. This wasn't harassment, it was attempted murder. The fire investigators arrived and quickly confirmed that the gas valve had been deliberately loosened. The sheer evil of this act escalated the conflict beyond property to life itself. But the next morning, when I called the fire department for the official police report, the file was missing overnight. Greg's dirty money and power had already reached the local officials. I knew I couldn't wait for the official channels. Greg had people everywhere. I decided to fight back by going public. I carefully sent the hidden camera footage, the video of Greg's men dumping trash and destroying my property, to a small, local news blogger. I made sure to send it completely anonymously, giving no name, only the shocking video. The blogger was furious and uploaded the video immediately. Within a few hours, the story started to go viral. People all over the state were outraged by the cruel arrogance of the wealthy neighbor trying to force out a grieving man. The comments online were full of anger and support for me. Just as the video was getting shared everywhere, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. A mysterious woman's voice was on the line, whispering quickly. "You don't know who Greg really is," she said. "He is much worse than you can imagine." She sounded desperate, confirming my fears that Greg's corruption ran deeper. "Meet me tonight at the old bookstore on Elm Street." Then, the line went dead. I went to the old bookstore that night, feeling a huge mix of fear and curiosity. The mysterious woman was there. Her name was Erica, and she was Greg Stanton's own sister. She looked pale and terrified but determined to speak the truth about her brother. Erica revealed the whole truth. Greg had been systematically forcing out tenants, not just me, to acquire a large block of land for a huge, illegal development deal. He planned to build a massive commercial building, ignoring all the city's zoning rules. The biggest problem for Greg, Erica explained, was my small house. It was the last single piece of land he needed to complete the project and sell it for millions of dollars to big investors. "He'll burn everything before he loses, Nelson," she warned, her eyes wide with worry. She provided the first real glimpse into the whole criminal operation and its scale. "He has no soul." Erica told me she felt sick about her brother's crimes, especially after hearing about the gas leak, and she promised to help me stop him. With Erica's help, Cecilia and I created a brilliant plan to trick Greg. Cecilia used her expert computer skills to pretend to be a big city investor named A. Jones, in an email. We sent the email to Greg's company, expressing interest in his secret Ridgeview project. Greg's assistant, eager for a massive sale, replied right away. The assistant quickly sent over confidential zoning plans that showed illegal modifications to the city's building codes and clearly indicated secret payoffs to officials. Proof of deep corruption, I realized. The paper trail was finally mine. But Greg was smart, and he quickly realized his assistant's email had been a major mistake. He must have traced the email somehow. He was furious. Just an hour later, Greg filed a severe cybercrime complaint against me, accusing me of hacking and stealing private business documents. His counterattack was swift and aggressive, showing he was deeply rattled by our progress. The fight was getting darker and more dangerous, and I knew I had crossed a line that Greg would never forgive. The very next morning, Detective Lyle showed up at my house with an official warrant. Greg's money and influence had clearly bought him protection, even from the police. Detective Lyle was a tall, serious man who looked like he believed every word of Greg's complaint. But as he looked around my small living room, his eyes paused on the framed photos of Alice and the pictures of my scorched, destroyed garden. Something in the detective's cold face seemed to soften. He spent a long time looking at the damage. As he was walking out, just when Greg's angry assistant called my phone, Detective Lyle quietly slipped me a small, folded piece of paper. The note was simple but gave me a huge lift of hope: "Keep digging. He's not untouchable." This small, private sign of support meant a crucial ally was now working inside the system. I wasn't alone anymore. After the detective left, I walked through the house, a sudden wave of fear washing over me. I checked my living room lamp and found a small black mic taped neatly inside the shade. I knew that Greg had bugged my house and was listening to every word. I decided to use his own trick against him. I staged a very loud, fake phone call. "Yes, I'm ready to sign the move-out papers," I said, making sure my voice sounded completely broken and defeated. "I'm giving up and leaving the city. I just want this nightmare to be over." I spoke about being too tired to fight anymore. Less than an hour later, Walter, Greg's jumpy assistant, was at my door. "I just need your signature to wrap up the closure," Walter said, holding out a paper. I talked to Walter and, with the mic recording, got him to say the final piece of evidence I needed. Greg said, "Once you're officially out, the whole deal goes through. The Ridgeview project is waiting." Walter didn't know he was confessing to a huge crime. This recorded conversation was the perfect final piece, clearly establishing Greg's criminal motive. I immediately sent the new audio tape to Detective Lyle. The detective called back right away. "This tape is huge," he said. "This proves his motive and intent. This might finally break him." I felt a rush of victory, but Greg was still dangerous and fighting dirty. The next day, I checked the county's public record database for my property. My official lease record had completely vanished. It was gone, like it never existed. Greg had somehow used his power to delete the digital file, making my house look like empty land ready for development. Just when I felt defeated, Erica, Greg's sister, messaged me. His backups are at his vacation house by the lake, she wrote urgently. He keeps a separate set of files for the project there. They are the originals. Go there now if you're serious. I knew this was the biggest risk I had taken yet, but I had no choice. I understood the absolute necessity of obtaining the physical, original documents immediately. This was the only way to get the original, undeleted documents. That night, I told no one my plans. I kissed Alice's photo and drove out of the city, heading deep into the dark, lonely woods toward Greg's secret, massive lake house. The journey was long and tense, but I finally found the lake house. It was a huge, empty mansion that looked cold and silent under the moonlight. I found a window that Erica had told me was never locked and slipped inside without a sound. The house was freezing. I quickly searched the huge, fancy study until I found a laptop and a dusty box of old files. Inside the box was a small hard drive labeled clearly, Ridgeview Project. My heart hammered with excitement. I plugged the hard drive into the laptop. I immediately found dozens of fake eviction files, all forged by Greg, just like the one he sent me. I also found detailed plans about the staged gas leaks in other houses Greg wanted to acquire. It was all right there, every terrible crime. This hard drive was the absolute motherlode of evidence, exposing everything. I was holding the key to stopping him. Suddenly, I heard a noise from the next room. Footsteps. Someone was inside the house with me. I froze, gripping the hard drive tightly. The footsteps came closer. I heard a nervous, familiar voice. It was Walter, Greg's assistant. Walter was on his phone, whispering. "He's still in the city, sir," Walter was saying. The fire didn't even scare him off. "He's talking about signing papers." Walter walked past the study door, heading toward the kitchen. I quickly unplugged the hard drive and the cable, then silently hid behind the big, soft velvet couch. I held my breath, clutching the drive against my chest, waiting for the longest 5 minutes of my life. I heard Walter finally leave the house. I crept out the back door, moving fast across the wet grass, jumped into my old truck, and sped away without turning on my lights. I was shaking from the fear. I knew I was in severe danger. He must have been watching the house. Just as I turned onto the main, dark road, I saw bright headlights flare up behind me. Someone had seen my truck and was following me closely. I drove wildly, taking fast, confusing turns through the dark, wooded roads to lose the car behind me. After what felt like hours, I finally shook off the tail and drove straight to Cecilia's apartment building. We didn't waste a second. We immediately backed up the entire Ridgeview Project hard drive onto a super secure cloud server. The evidence was now safe forever. As we reviewed the files, we found something even more shocking: secret audio recordings of Greg's phone calls. On one recording, we clearly heard Greg's cold voice ordering the gas sabotage at my house. "Just make it look like a tragic accident," he commanded. Cecilia and I gave each other a tired, triumphant high five. We had done it. Just as we celebrated, the lights in Cecilia's apartment suddenly flickered and died. The internet signal dropped. The entire neighborhood was in a total blackout. This immediate, coordinated attack confirmed that Greg's powerful network was vast and fast. Greg was back and he was angry. I knew instantly that the blackout was Greg's doing. He was back early from his vacation and was cutting the power to stop me from uploading the files, not knowing we had already finished. I looked out the window. Even in the darkness, I could see dark shadows moving near Cecilia's apartment building. Greg's men were surrounding the property. I stayed calm. I took the physical hard drive and quickly got a screwdriver. I opened the back of a small, framed photo of Alice that Cecilia had on her desk. I carefully hid the drive inside the frame, behind Alice's sweet smiling face. I would not let Greg find this original piece of proof. "You wanted me to forget her," I whispered, holding the frame. "You just made me remember who I am." The physical drive was now concealed, protected by the symbol of what he tried to destroy. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Detective Lyle. "Greg's back in the city early," the message said. "Do not let him know you have the proof. He will destroy it all." The final, dangerous game had begun. I couldn't stay at Cecilia's place. I drove away before dawn. Since my internet and power were out, I drove to the closest public library when it opened, pretending to be a student. I quickly uploaded the entire cache of files, the fake evictions, the audio, and the plans to all the major national news outlets. I made sure it was impossible to stop. The leak went global in minutes. The story exploded everywhere, with huge headlines: "Corrupt developers fake evictions and sabotage exposed." The media was in a frenzy. My anonymity was safe, and the full weight of public opinion was finally against him. I drove home, knowing the moment of confrontation was near. Later that day, Greg showed up at my house, walking right up to the burnt, damaged doorstep of the place he had tried to destroy. He was strangely calm, holding a takeaway coffee. He stopped and looked right at me. "We should talk, Nelson," he said, his voice quiet and deadly. Greg stepped into my damaged yard and offered me a massive amount of hush money. He put on a show of apologizing, pretending it was just a business misunderstanding that had gotten out of hand. I didn't say a word, just watching his face. Then, his nice act vanished completely. His tone became dark and frightening. "If I go down, Nelson, your life burns with mine," he hissed, his eyes cold. To try and scare me, Greg showed me a photo on his phone. It was a picture of me standing in the study of his lake house, holding his laptop. He had expertly doctored the photo to change the time and date, making it look like I was trespassing illegally after the new leak. "I have proof of your crime, too," he threatened. His attempt to flip the narrative showed his desperation and ruthlessness, despite the evidence. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Detective Lyle: "That photo's completely fake. Play along. We need you to keep him talking and get a confession." I kept my face blank and agreed to meet him later. I spent the next few hours working with Detective Lyle. We had a plan. The detective and his team secured an official arrest warrant for Greg, based on the terrible audio recordings I had given them. The police quickly surrounded Greg's huge mansion, ready to make the arrest. But when the officers went inside, the house was totally empty. The expensive furniture was still there, but Greg had escaped. He had run from the law. "He's gone," Detective Lyle called to confirm. I felt a chill. A powerful, angry man was now a ghost, loose in the city because of me. Then, a package was delivered to my door by a kid on a bike. It was wrapped in brown paper and very small. I opened the delivery, recognizing his last-ditch attempt to exert control and fear. The note on top was written in Greg's neat handwriting: "To the man who didn't know his place." I knew this was his final, cruel insult. I opened the package carefully. Inside, I found a handful of ashes from the burned part of my garden, the broken plaque from Alice's memorial bench, and a note written in furious capital letters: "She's gone. Accept it." My hands trembled holding the broken pieces of my wife's memory. The grief was a huge, physical wave, but it didn't break me. Instead, my face hardened. Greg was trying to hurt me one last time with cruelty, but it only made me more determined. I called Cecilia right away. "He never left the city," Cecilia said a few hours later, her voice tense. She had been tracking Greg's phone signal. It was coming from a cheap, tiny apartment on the edge of town. Greg was hiding there, arrogant and waiting to see what I would do next. He was trying to anticipate my moves, believing he was still the ultimate mastermind. We had the perfect bait to catch him now, his own arrogance. Now that we knew where Greg was hiding, I worked with Detective Lyle to set the final trap. I sent Greg an email, pretending to drop all the charges completely. I wrote a long, fake apology, saying I was scared and tired and wanted peace. I even lied and said I had deleted the hard drive and destroyed the files to protect myself from his trespassing photo. Greg, now feeling safe and arrogant, replied within minutes. He was victorious. He invited me to talk it out privately, just the two of us, at my house that evening. He wanted to rub his win in my face. Detective Lyle and a small, highly trained hidden film crew set up all around my property. They hid cameras in the bushes and put on body microphones. I stood in my living room, waiting. I focused on my resolve, knowing this final confrontation required great strength. I felt a cold knot in my stomach, but I knew this was the only way to end the nightmare forever and get the confession we needed. Greg arrived at my house, looking tired and unshaven, but still with that smug look. He clearly thought I was a beaten, scared man. We sat across from each other, and he immediately started mocking me. He thought the police were long gone and that no one was listening. That little gas leak was supposed to end this months ago, Nelson, Greg chuckled softly. I almost got away with it, too. He then boasted about how easy it was to bribe the officials he needed to get his way. Every cruel word was recorded and streamed live back to Detective Lyle's command center. Greg was giving a full, clear confession to attempted murder and corruption. Suddenly, Greg heard a small static sound from the bushes. He looked at my face, which was hard and unsmiling, and realized his mistake. The moment of realization flashed across his face as he understood the entire deception. "It's a setup," he screamed, jumping up just as police officers burst out of the shadows. Greg fought hard, screaming and thrashing, but he was quickly dragged out in handcuffs. He was shouting about his lawyers and how this was all illegal, but the crowd of reporters who suddenly appeared didn't care. They swarmed the scene, taking flash photos of Greg being put into a police car. I stood silently by my fence, watching the chaos unfold. Tears finally came to my eyes, tears that were a mix of deep grief for Alice and the overwhelming joy of justice I had finally earned. A few minutes later, a quiet woman touched my arm gently. It was Erica, Greg's sister. "Thank you, Nelson," she whispered, her voice filled with relief. "You freed more people than you know." I simply nodded. His arrest was the first step in dismantling a corrupt system that had preyed on others. I hadn't just saved my own house, I had stopped a cruel man from destroying a whole neighborhood. The good guy had won, not by throwing a punch, but by being smart and never giving up. Months later, my yard was a picture of life and renewal. The dirt where the debris and ashes had lain was completely transformed. My garden was flourishing again, bursting with bright, colorful flowers. I often saw neighborhood children playing right outside, a beautiful symbol of peace. I took a new piece of granite and placed a beautiful, strong new bench under the old oak tree. The bench was engraved with a simple, true message, for her. For peace. As I stood watering the newly planted flowers, a final letter arrived in the mail. It was a legal document. Because of the lawsuits and the evidence I exposed, Greg's entire estate was seized by the state. The letter stated that my little house was now legally mine, debt-free. I smiled, looking at the vibrant life all around me. The court's final ruling meant my home, a symbol of Alice's memory, was completely safe. The man who tried to bury me had only helped the roots of my own life grow stronger. He tried to bury me, I thought, looking at Alice's beautiful garden, but he forgot I was planting roots. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the playlist now.